I've opened my Camera Raw file in Photoshop, and this Camera Raw dialog box automatically appears. And the Camera Raw dialog box is a really powerful tool because all the corrections we make in Camera Raw are non-destructive to our image. So we only have so many pixels to work with, and those are the pixels we've gotten at capture. So it's really important that we shoot in Camera Raw to get the most information allowable to us, and then we do edits in a non-destructive manner. So anything we do in this dialog box is going to be okay, and then when we open it in Photoshop, we're going to make sure that we always have everything on a separate layer, so we're not ever affecting our original image, and we're preserving all of that information. So this is an image of a copy slide of a 2D piece here, if you're wondering what you're looking at. So we can show you some shadows, highlights, and then this is mold that's grown over the top of it. So a little bit of color to work with as well. Under the Camera Raw settings here, you can go through these menus and explore. I'm just going to show you basic adjustments and adjustments that I do when opening images. So we want to bring out as much detail as possible. So what I'm going to show you how to do is to make your image low contrast, flat. And it's not going to look good, but we're going to adjust that in Photoshop because we want to start with as much detail as possible in our image. So we want to bring out all the detail in the shadows and as much as we can in the highlights, so we have as much information to start with as possible. So you can look at the white balance. If you shot under incandescent lighting, indoor lighting, it may look really orange. You may want to try the auto white balance and see what it does for your color temperature here. And this has warmed up my color temperature quite a bit. And you can also use the temperature sliders as well to see if you can't take out that color cast. Don't go too far with this because we're going to do more specific adjustments with our color cast in Photoshop. But go ahead and try this out and see how it affects your image. The exposure slider is really great. You can change your exposure like you could in camera. It's a really powerful tool. Keep in mind if we go too far, I've blown out my highlights. I've lost all this detail. This can be a lifesaver if you're shooting a commercial job or something where you have a image that's come out very, very dark and you have to save that image. This exposure tab can be a lifesaver. So I'm in CS5. Most of you who are watching this are going to be in CS6. It's pretty much the same. The menus might look a little different to you, but the principles are all the same. So I'm going to go ahead and use this recovery slider. And when I slide my recovery slider, you can watch my highlights are going to darken quite a bit. So I'm bringing out information in the whites. And all the way out, you can see that my whites brighten up a lot. So I want to do some recovery, and I want to make sure I have as much detail in my highlights as possible to start with. And I can always adjust this again later in Photoshop, but if I import without that detail, I can't get it back. So it's important to have all that detail in there when you start. I'm also going to go down to my blacks here, and I'm going to take my blacks down to 0 or 1, and that's going to open up all the shadow area and bring out all of that detail again, so I have maximum detail to edit with in Photoshop. There's vibrance and saturation and things that will affect color. Go ahead and play with these if you'd like. I'm not going to show them right now. In some instances you may want to bump up the saturation, but don't go crazy with anything. You never want your images to look like they've been overworked in Photoshop. If I go to the tonal curve here to the right, I see this histogram here and a curve line. We'll get into curves more extensively next week, but what we want to do here is we want to, again, recover as much detail as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my highlights down, which is going to bring out more detail, and I'm going to bring my lights down. And then I'm also going to lighten my darks, and again lighten my shadows. And I don't want to go too far with this, but I want to just flatten up this image so it doesn't look great right now, but we're going to make it look great in Photoshop. What we want, again, maximum detail to edit with in Photoshop. So what you have here is kind of a stair-step looking histogram that we've changed this curve. Use your sliders here, and not every image might not be the same. but it will generally kind of look like this. And now we have maximum detail to go ahead and open up in Photoshop. Feel free to explore all the other tabs. You can do things, there are some effects, lens corrections, and things like that. You don't have to worry about any of that right now. As soon as we're done with preserving our details in here, we're going to go ahead and open this up in Photoshop, and then we're going to start making corrections on our layers.